What's up, guys? Welcome to episode number 19 of Sir Kevin Says. Thank you for joining. Today we feature Harry Kim, pretty cool guy, all around good trumpet player. I'm being sarcastic. You'll see in the podcast why. Harry was born in New York City, where he attended high school for the performing arts and prepared for a career as a classical trumpeter. After high school, however, he relocated to Los Angeles and soon discovered the world of funk and jazz. After several years touring throughout the U.S. with various show groups, R&B groups, and big bands, including the Harry James Big Band, he returned to L.A. to further his career. Latin music took a front seat during the disco era, a time when live music was rarely featured in discothèques, but was in strong demand by salsa audiences. It was at this time that he began working with such artists as Tito Puente, Celia, Cruz, and also began honing his arranging skills by writing and performing on many disco productions. Soon he joined Stevie Wonder's Wonder Love, which opened the doors of opportunity to perform and record with such artists as Marvin Gaye, Aretha Franklin, The Four Tops, The Temptations, and Smokey Robinson. He was on stage for the Emmy Award-winning 25th anniversary of Motown, performing with many of Motown's greatest stars. It was an evening highlighted by Michael Jackson's introduction of his now legendary moonwalk. In 1985, he joined the Phoenix Horns, the celebrated horn section of Earth, Wind & Fire. Together, they performed with various artists throughout the U.S., Europe, and Asia. Included were two tours in 1987 and 1988. In 1989, Kim participated in the making of Phil Collin's multi-award-winning CD, But Seriously. A world tour followed in 1990, marking the beginning of a long association with Collins. The multi-platinum live CD concert series Hits Live was released soon after. Realizing the many advantages of being part of a high-performance horn section, Kim founded the Vine Street Horns. He called together musicians with whom he had worked for many years. Numerous productions with various artists were to follow. In 1994, Phil Collins called on the Vine Street Horns to join him on his Both Sides tour, an extensive 18-month world tour. In 1996, he was asked by Collins to organize a big band featuring adaptations of his music and the music of Genesis in a jazz setting. The Phil Collins Big Band was born. As musical director and arranger, Kim and the Vine Street Horns took center stage, performing at all the major European jazz festivals, with Tony Bennett as vocalist and Quincy Jones as a guest conductor. This was also the year they recorded Phil Collins' Into the Light CD, which toured the world in 1997. The year 1998 saw another Phil Collins Big Band tour, resulting in a live CD entitled A Hot Night in Paris. In the new millennium, Harry Kim continues to enjoy a well-balanced schedule of studio recordings and live performances. Although he continues to tour around the world with Phil Collins, he also manages to add his long list of credits while at home. He was also the horn section leader and arranger for the 2005 through 2009 seasons of American Idol, as well as America's Got Talent and Celebrity Duets. If you have not already, I invite you to subscribe down below. Make sure you check out all the other videos that are up on this channel and playlist. Sir Kevin Says is all you have to search. These episodes are available on Spotify, Anchor, and Apple Podcasts if you are a audio version type of listener. So go ahead and check that out if you'd like. Episode number 19 with Harry Kim. Here you go. Welcome to episode 19 of Sir Kevin Says. Today I am with Harry Kim, producer, arranger, band leader, founder
of the Vine Street Horns.
Harry, how are you doing?
I'm good. May I add, trumpet player.
Yes.
An overall nice guy.
Yes, you're a very, very nice guy. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you for coming all the way from wherever you came.
The Inland Empire, the other valley.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's hot there, isn't it?
It's hot over here too. It's about the same right now.
Okay.
Debatable.
It's a weird thing. We're having a monsoonal, what do they call it? It's really humid in LA.
Yeah.
It's very, very rare. So
I know. How's it going, Harry? What have you been up to these days?
Well, getting ready to tour in 2 weeks again with Phil Collins. I've been touring with Phil Collins on this round about 3 years now. He started touring again, came out of retirement in 2017.
Wow.
And for 3 years, we've been covering the world. And audiences are loving him more now than ever before.
Yeah.
You know, I I've been with him for 30 years.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's so beloved by his fans now. They love him, and the audiences are amazing. And the good thing about it is because, we used to tour. One of the things that really made him feel sad all the time, because critics hated him. They never wrote good reviews on him. They tore him apart because, he was a pop singer. He wrote great pop tunes, and critics were looking for pioneers in the rock world, and it wasn't his fault. He wrote hits, So it used to make him very sad. But everywhere we're going now, it's like those old critics all cacked. They all died. And all these young critics are discovering him for the first time.
Yeah.
And writing incredible reviews. It's really amazing to read.
Yeah.
It's not like the critics have passed. You read the reviews, or I would read the reviews every once in a while, and it didn't sound like they were at the show. Maybe they sent somebody, or maybe they stayed for the first 3 songs and then they trashed them. But these people are staying, and they're seeing the audience reaction, and they're also experiencing it, because this really is a great show.
Yeah.
And so the reviews have been great. And
That's
he's
awesome.
been happy.
Yeah.
We've been happy, because we've always felt bad too reading the reviews, and they just trashed him back in the day. But not anymore. He's a legend now.
Beloved.
And he's beloved.
Yes.
That's the word.
That's
People
incredible.
love him, and his fans love him even more. And they're bringing their children, their grown children. They're all discovering Phil Collins. Well, I shouldn't say discovering, because any Phil Collins fan played the music in the house all the time, so their kids heard it while they were growing up constantly. I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And then my mom and my dad used to play this music, and now I get to hear it for the first time live, and it's really outstanding. And then I feel real old.
So Harry, where are you originally from? Where were you born? Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. I'm sure everybody wants to know.
If you want to get into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So let me tell you a little bit about my background. And sorry if it turns out to be a lot, not a little.
No.
But this is the part that fascinates people all the time. See, my parents are Korean. My grandparents on my mother's side were Korean immigrants that somehow...
안녕하세요?
Como tú quieras, chico, porque yo no hablo eso.
That's right. And you're fluent in French too, right?
Not fluent, but
you speak.
I could romance a woman in French.
Okay.
Anyway, but let's see. My grandparents on my mother's side migrated to Mexico, to Yucatan, as workers back there in turn of the last century. And they worked on plantations. Henicane was a big commodity at the time. They made rope and a lot of stuff out of that particular cactus. And they showed up, and it was like slavery, indentured servitude. They went there, and it turned out to be slave labor. And so this is actually documented. This book's written on the group of Koreans that escaped from Yucatan, Mexico, and went to Cuba. And there were apparently only 293 of them. And this, like I said, a book written, but it's all in Korean. I've never read it because I can't read Korean. So my mother grew up, born in Mexico, grew up in Cuba. And then she, after World War II, she decided to be a pioneer, very courageous woman, went by herself to New York, and she was an illegal immigrant for a while. Orale se! And, by the time immigration caught up to her, she had kids and was married and all that jazz. But we grew up speaking Spanish.
Wow.
Because my mother spoke Spanish, and my father grew up in America, a Korean American. So he spoke English, but their common language was Korean. They had they both spoke an uneducated Korean, but they could communicate with each other. What do they call it? Like hand-me-down Korean. So they spoke Korean to each other. My father spoke English to us, and my mother spoke Spanish to us. So we grew up speaking English and Spanish, and and grew up in a very Latin culture in New York. Grew up in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. We were really, really poor. We grew up in those neighborhoods like you see in old movies, tenement houses, rat-filled, and no hot water, and banging on the pipes so that the landlord would turn on they were called superintendents back then, the super. So they'd turn on the furnace so we could have some hot water, but it wasn't often. It was a time when it was so cold in the winter, we would have kerosene heaters in the bedrooms and stuff. And the only reason nobody died from carbon monoxide is they were drafty. They were so what do they call that? They were not energy efficient apartments. It was cold and it was drafty. So that's probably what saved everybody's life. Everybody had kerosene heaters or had the ovens on all night. And we never heard of anybody dying of carbon monoxide poisoning. But we grew up there, and for a long time I was kind of embarrassed to say that I grew up in the slums. But after seeing Gangs in New York and finding out how historic the area I grew up in, I'm very proud of having come up from there, because it is a historic area. I mean, every immigrant wave that came to the United States to New York City ended up there at one point. The Irish, the Jews, the
Italians,
everybody. Forget about it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Italian, Little Italy was right down the street. Chinatown was there. I'm very proud of that heritage, and I'm kind of shocked when I go back, because that area is really improved a lot. It's not the slums anymore, and you see how things change over time. Some of the neighborhoods I lived in, like later on, I moved to Brooklyn, and some of the neighborhoods I lived there were on the cusp of being slums, but now they're like multi-million-dollar buildings. The brownstones of Park Slope, for instance, they're talking about. Those are expensive homes now. They were expensive back then. And I remember the last place I lived in, Park Slope. Like I said, it was sort of slums and sort of not, and but it was really safe because the mafia had a very strong presence there. So young punks like you could run around the neighborhood harassing people,
That's good.
I was just kidding.
No, you're good. You're good. When did you start playing trumpet?
I started playing trumpet in junior high school in the 7th grade.
Wow.
I wanted to play trumpet because, I saw this movie on TV when I was 10, a movie called Young Man with a Horn, starring Kirk Douglas. But all the trumpet parts were played by Harry James. And I remember being a kid, and it sounds weird today because children don't go through this. They're too busy with their Nintendos or Xboxes. But I remember hearing the sound of the trumpet, and I got obsessed. I had to make that sound. So I didn't get around to getting a trumpet or actually playing by the time till I got to junior high school, 7th grade. But by then I had gotten books and learned the fingerings and everything. So when I first picked up a trumpet, I could play a C scale, and I was really into it. Yeah. Really into it.
Did you learn how to read in middle school as well? Or was
it was all part of the the learning process. You didn't just learn to play an instrument. You learned how to read it too. Yeah. And sure, yeah.
How important do you think that is?
Reading?
Yes.
Well, it's kind of like this. Can you imagine going through life without reading, being able to read? If you want to be a musician, you can't limit yourself to be an ear player. There's a lot of work out there that you won't be able to do if you can't read, because you go to play with a band, you're not going to rehearse in a garage for 3 months and learn their songs. They're going to put music in front of you, and you're going to have to be able to cop the style and understand and get all the right notes, like in a day or two, and then perform it that night or record it. You don't even get a day. You go to a studio and here are the chord changes, here's the stuff, and you play it. So if you don't do that, you limit yourself to playing by ear and playing with other guys who play by ear. And unless you're extremely talented, you can't get away without reading. I know people that don't read, but they could hear something one time and have it down.
Yeah, their retention is...
Yeah, it's just amazing. And not only their ear, they could listen to something one time and know what the chords are. They could find it immediately. Yeah. I mean, there's very few and far between that could do that. But, and then the great rhythm players, all have retention, great retention. Yeah, the guys like, I've seen Greg Fillinganes and like, they start jamming. I remember one time I saw him jamming with a trio, and they started playing songs from the 70s. They were just playing by memory. Ricky Lawson was playing drums. Wow. Did I mention that? And every hit, every chord, everything exactly like the record. How do they remember that? They just picked the song and started playing it. And rhythm players I've noticed, like great drummers. I used to do Dancing with the Stars, and Teddy Campbell is a fantastic drummer.
Yes,
I've seen him at rehearsal. He's looking at the music the first time, and then he never looked at the music again. He had it down. I mean, it wasn't just all the accents, all the syncopations, and all that stuff on the funk tunes and the R&B tunes. He had them down. Never had to look at the music again. I said, how do you do that? But that's a gift, But yes, reading is important if you want to expand your horizons as a musician. If you just want to be a wedding player or something like that, you don't have to read.
Yeah.
But I think anybody who wants to become a musician wants to be able to bring as much to the party as they can. The more you bring, the more you can do, the more you get paid. And it also gives you the confidence to walk in and demand some money because you could do it all. Yeah. Anyway, that's...
Where did you end up studying music after high school? Did you get a degree and all, the whole shebang?
No, actually, I was working so much in high school that, we were, like I tell you, we were very poor. So when I started working as a musician, I was really happy to make the money, and there was a lot of work around. I was by my senior year of high school, I was working all week at a nightclub and was still going to school, and making some pretty good bucks. And so I went to college for less than a semester. I went to LA City College, and I realized that school is not for me. I'm kind of ADD, I did well in school though.
Yeah.
I went to the High School of Performing Arts, which is what they made the movie Fame about.
Yeah.
Now there's lots of performing arts high schools, but at that time, I think there were only two in the whole country, and there was Performing Arts High School and Music and Art High School, and they were both related high schools. But I forgot my train of thought.
We're talking about school and if you pursued higher education.
Oh yeah. So when I finished high school, I just was working so much that I didn't see a need to go to college, and also probably because we weren't a middle class family, and I think in middle class families there's a lot of pressure to, like a formula for life and success. You move on to college and you get a job and
buy a big house and
that didn't exist in my home. They were happy to see that I was so enthusiastic about music and I was working and I wasn't in gangs or anything like that. They just encouraged to go ahead, do what you're doing And I just did. And like it was a great time because there was a lot of work.
Yeah.
There was a lot of club work. There was all kinds of stuff. So I didn't think that. One of the things I remember, all my friends that did come from middle class families, they all said, well, yeah, I mean, there were music students too, and they said, oh, you go to college, you study music, but you have to have something to fall back on. And I know now that was their parents talking. With me, that you have to have something to fall back on. And that was like betting you were going to fail. The failure was not an option because, see, when you're poor, you go, this is it.
Yeah.
I don't have any options. I do this well. I'm succeeding. I ain't going to worry about falling back on and then also I had this kind of innate faith that everything is going to work because, gosh, I got through poverty, I mean, even today, I went through some tough times recently when my wife got sick and eventually passed away, and I got left with a lot of debt and the probability that I was going to lose my house and all that stuff, which to some people that would be devastating, but I remember to me, I never had a house before. So if I don't have a house now, it's not a big deal. I've been poor before, so it's not, it's not the end of the world to be poor, but I guess maybe that kind of positive outlook, kept me cheerful in those times. And I was able to persevere, and get back on my feet,
Did you have a good support system during that time, like friends that you could reach out to, kind of let them know about the situation, or if they wanted to extend a hand of any sort?
Financially, you mean?
Well, not maybe financially, but just maybe emotional support during that time.
Oh yeah, well, that was an interesting time because my really good friends were there. They were just there. I think a good friend is a person that's just there. You don't have to talk, and they don't have to offer advice. And when you're going through something like that, like illness and death, the last thing you want to hear is advice. You just want somebody to be there. But I understand because when you lose somebody, they lost them too, so they kind of need, some sort of, they're going through some grief too. So they're offering all this advice. But I remember at that time when I was going through it, I didn't realize. I would tell some people, just shut up. I didn't ask you for advice. I would just tell them to shut up. Stop giving me all this advice. But I realized now they had to do it too because they were grieving as well. But also during that time, I distanced myself from quite a few people because I realized that they were not really. I was never really bonded with them, and that was a true time when they proved it. That they weren't really that caring. So anyway.
No. A little bit earlier, you mentioned.
I do want to add one thing.
Yes.
My biggest support system was my son.
Is he your only son?
Yeah, he's my only son. He's 28 now.
Wow.
He was 24 when his mom passed away, and I remember the first thing he said was, "I'm glad I'm not 14 right now." And he's absolute reflection of her, and said all the right things when I needed help, and
that's awesome.
It was solid, and we helped each other. It's been 4 years, so we're still, here for each other. It's gratitude because a lot of people ask me if I felt bitter that my wife was taken away from me, and I never felt bitter, and I think that has a lot to do with faith in God.
Yes.
And accepting what is.
Right.
And but no, as the time went by, I felt more and more and more and more grateful that I had the years. I was married 29 years.
Wow.
That I had the 29 beautiful years with her and my son, and so there's nothing but gratitude, no bitterness, no, not at all. There's no room for bitterness in life.
That's good. That's good. You mentioned Ricky Lawson a little bit earlier. I don't know if this story is true or not. I've heard this from multiple people, but I want to see if maybe you could verify it. They said apparently that Ricky Lawson got an endorsement with Rolex because he was a timekeeper. I don't know if that's true or not.
It doesn't surprise me if he did. Ricky can get an endorsement for anything.
Yeah.
Refrigerators. He has asked me if I wanted free trumpet cases. He can get an endorsement. You know, he was just such a jovial cat, and he had his politics really well, and he could talk. He spent a whole week in Stuttgart schmoozing Mercedes-Benz, trying to get a Mercedes-Benz from him.
Wow.
But he got a Mercedes-Benz gold watch from him. That's for sure. But he was good. He was good at it. He could go anywhere and walk out with free stuff.
So, well,
I wouldn't put it past him if he did get a free Rolex.
That's great. That's good.
You know, Ricky Lawson had a strange fetish. He loved to detail cars. He loved it. It was like a passion for him.
Yeah.
So sometimes, you know, we'd be at a venue somewhere, and Phil's manager would show up, or somebody important, the promoter would show up or something, and he'd offer to detail their car.
Wow. For free or?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
He loved it, and he left it looking immaculate. He loved that. I hate washing I even hate taking my car to car wash, you know. But no, that was a big thing with him. He always had his stuff with him.
Yeah.
You know.
Wow.
And Ricky Lawson was quite a character.
Thanks for sharing that. I had no idea. That's pretty cool. I need to detail myself in my car.
You want to detail my car? By the way?
Harry, you've played with Tito Puente, Celia, Cruz, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, Aretha Franklin, The Four Tops, Temptations, Smokey Robinson. List goes on and on and on. Right? The opportunities that you've gotten to work with such amazing artists. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it was all a progression, you know, and it was all usually directly accredited to one or two people that I had met along the line. You know, one of them was Ernie Fields Jr., who at the time, I didn't meet him as a music contractor. I just met him as a fellow musician at a recording. But he had an incredible mind, because I didn't see him again for another couple of years, and he remembered my name. He remembered where we met and all this kind of stuff. And so we became friends. And before you know it, he started calling me for different jobs. And one of the people he introduced me to was this guy named H.B. Barnum, who is a music producer, musical director, arranger, all that stuff. And he was working with Aretha at the time as her musical director. So, you know, I started working with Aretha Franklin because of Ernie and because of HB. Prior to that, you know, I started working with people that were involved with Motown. I was in a group, in a band called The Mighty Fire in 1981. And we had a record deal with Elektra Records. We put out two albums, not CDs, albums. And somebody involved in that group indirectly was a staff composer for I think it was called Joe Bett, which is the publishing company for Motown. So they started calling me to arrange and play on recording sessions. So that's how I started playing with the Four Tops and the Temptations, writing strings and horns for some of their later CDs.
Yeah.
And then eventually, you know, it's word of mouth. You meet people, and then I'd get hired to do a show with the Temptations. It was a great show when the Temptations and the Four Tops did a combined show.
Yeah.
And they did lots of them around the LA area in the early 80s. I think, well, see, in 1983, I did this, actually, it was the first show of its kind. It's called the 25th Anniversary of Motown Celebration.
Yeah.
It was a huge show, won a lot of Emmys, and and stuff. And later on, there were a lot of those kind of tribute shows and stuff like that. But that particular one was, I remember, one of the most exciting moments was seeing the Four Tops and Temptations on stage together.
Yeah.
And I think that inspired people to do tours with the both of them. And so, yeah, I used to play with those guys whenever they came into town because somehow I knew the guy who was calling the horn section and whatnot. And, another great moment when we did that, when we did the 25th anniversary of Motown was Michael Jackson.
Moonwalk.
The moonwalk. He did.
And you were.
I was on stage right behind him when he did it, and everybody like, did you see that? But apparently that's not a new move. He didn't create the move. It had been done for years.
But it was the first time. It was
the first time we saw anybody do it in person, and I mean, I think it had been a long time since anybody had seen it.
Yeah.
I think mimes can do that, and there's guys, dancers and stuff from the 30s and 40s that did that kind of stuff. But it wasn't like Michael Jackson doing it, and it did look fantastic.
Yeah, that's a historic moment.
That was a historic moment.
Because everybody looks it up on YouTube, like first time a moonwalk seen on TV or whatever, and Michael Jackson pops up.
Also, Marvin Gaye's performance, that was nearing the end for him. And I remember when we did that separate from the show, his segment. And he did a couple of takes on that. If anybody out there has seen Marvin Gaye's performance there, and boy, he had each one of the takes were fantastic,
Yeah.
And there were also a lot of acts that went on that and that didn't end up in the final product, and I felt bad for them. Like, the good performances, but to not have been included in the TV show was like, oh, poor guys.
Yeah.
You've
also worked with Tito Puente, Celia Cruz. What's that like?
I went through a Latin stage during the disco era in the mid-'70s and stuff. Well, prior to that, there were a lot of bands that used horns. I worked, playing funk bands, R&B bands, what they call blue-eyed soul bands, and, Chicago was popular and all this. So there were a lot of clubs that hired horn bands, and we played whatever was played on the radio, in which a lot of the music had horns. But during the disco era, they couldn't hire bands to play that music because disco music was very overproduced with lots of strings and stuff like that. So these clubs started closing down, and then they started building these discos where all they did is play records. And so work started, dying for club bands. But the only clubs that still had horn bands were salsa clubs. Salsa trumpets and trombones and saxes are, main staple in salsa music.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was salsa brava, which was heavily influenced by jazz. And, back in those days, you had Celia Cruz and people like that. But you know what? The vocalist wasn't that important. You go see Ray Barretto's band, for instance, or Eddie Palmieri's band, Tito Puente's band. It really didn't matter who was the singer, and they were doing just fine. There, Típica 73 and all these groups. They didn't push the singer because it was the music, and it was like jazz influence on that. And then I think later on in the 80s, sometime, I think record companies decided, well, let's market this music because apparently it has a big audience.
Yeah.
And prior to that, too, they started preparing that because they started calling, Latin music salsa. That word didn't exist before the mid-'70s. And but that was a way to categorize the music in record stores, So now you look for salsa in a record bin that said salsa, and you find all these artists. And but then in the 80s, like I said, they started promoting the artist. They looked for good-looking young singers to promote, and the music got a little watered down. Well, they took out all the jazz influence, except for the harmonies. They still use really good, harmonies and stuff, progressions, chords.
Yeah.
But they took all the solos out. You don't hear trumpet solos or trombone solos in salsa these days.
Yeah.
And the arrangements are very, very clever, very well written, but they don't go over the top with musical interludes and stuff like they used to do in the old days.
Right.
So anyway, I got involved with playing salsa, and a lot of times, like Tito Puente would come to town, but for some reason he didn't have everybody, or they couldn't make it, or I don't know, maybe the promoter wasn't paying enough for him to bring the whole band. So I would be one of the guys they would call to come and fill in. And also the same thing would happen with Celia Cruz. And then after a while, actually, Celia Cruz would start requesting me when she came to LA. And same thing with A.D. Palmieri and groups like that.
Yeah.
Just got really active. I mean, it seems like a lifetime, but I think I only played salsa full time for about 3 years. But it seems like a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
I was working 7 nights a week and after hours on Fridays and Saturdays. And it was so much fun. I was in my 20s having a great time and drinking and partying and playing and all this stuff. It was really, and also, there was some disco recording in the daytime, and I would record and arrange for horns and strings for different. It seemed like it was on the top of the world at that time, working on days and working at night. And,
How many albums have you been a part of to date?
Well, I don't know. I think if you look up my discography, you could find a lot of them. I don't know. I wish I had been on more hit records, but just a bunch, with the Four Tops and Aretha and Marvin Gaye. I did Marvin Gaye's last album right before he passed away.
Yeah.
And Smokey Robinson. I recorded on Lady Gaga's, one of her albums. I never kept track of that stuff. But apparently people don't have a life, and they do, because my full discography is online somewhere. I've seen it. It's crazy. Like, I don't remember doing this, and I remember doing that.
Yeah.
I played on, I think I played on a lot of Juan Gabriel's music since the 70s. Juan Gabriel was an interesting guy. He was extremely creative.
Yeah.
Hard to play with live because he had an MD, because it was hard to follow him because he was so creative. He create verses on the spot.
Wow.
And add lyrics and melodies to a verse. And so the conductor had to be listening, and then here we go, because he was undisciplined. He would sing his heart out till he lost his voice during, if you're supposed to do a 2-hour show, you go 3 hours. He didn't care. He got into it. He was a amazing guy, very prolific. He wrote so many songs, but he had his problems. I mean. He didn't give album credits. Somebody asked him if we could have album credit, and he said, "Well, then you have to pay me."
Wow.
So he was kind of that way, but I don't know how much of that was for show and for his to create a certain legacy about him. But I remember there were fun moments, and they were like, "What?" The guy was so successful, he didn't have to be the way he was, So,
how many times have you toured the world?
Well, what do you mean the world? I'd never played in Antarctica. I've never played in the North Pole.
When they say Phil Collins World Tour, how many times have you?
In 30 years, I think we went around the world at least 4 times. At least. And
did you like it? Did you enjoy touring?
I hated it.
Really?
No, man.
Some people do. You've seen that interview with Michael Jackson where they tell him, "Hey, Michael, just say that you're having fun on this tour," or something like that, and he says, I don't like touring. I don't like it. And he's like, okay, but at least show a little bit of enthusiasm. And then he says, I love touring.
Who said that?
Michael Jackson.
Oh, well, I don't know. See, it's an interesting irony because I've never been the kind of person that wanted to travel or was interested in going places. I just wasn't. And somehow I was dragged around the world, and I'm glad I was.
Yeah.
Touring with a guy like Phil Collins is amazing. First of all, it's like a vacation. Everything is first class. They treat you really well. Nothing. The priority is the music and the musicians. So they make sure the schedules are cool. And, you don't have to get up early, take planes or anything. They have private planes, and they make sure that you get enough sleep. We'll leave the hotel and go to the airport, and when you have a private plane, you don't have to go through the airport. You go to a private airport. You drive right up to the plane, get on. The stress of traveling isn't there.
Wow.
1:00 flights in the afternoon and the 6 a.m. crap. Like a lot of bands, you gotta be in the lobby at 4 a.m. to take a 6 a.m. flight. And day after day, no, none of that. So, I mean, Phil himself, the artist himself doesn't want to overwork himself,
Yeah.
And it's created for fun. And plus, early on when Phil was really, really, really on top of the world, it was easy to bring the family because we would spend 5-6 weeks in Germany alone. We'd stay a week at every city. And then bring the family, they live out with you. And then you go to the next town, they come out and like that. We weren't flying around every day, and I remember Australia 5 weeks, Latin America. We would play multiple times in 1 week in one city. So my wife came with me almost all the time, and my son did until we couldn't pull him out of school anymore. But it didn't suck.
That's good.
It was really amazing. I mean, some people do tours and they have to leave the family home for some reason. Well, my wife, she was a homemaker. So, it was not uncommon for me to say, hey, let's go to France. When? Tomorrow. Bam, we go. But it's not like a lot of people have work and they can't take off and whatnot. And we didn't have those restrictions. So a lot of people I could see, they leave town, they leave their families at home, and you leave for long periods of time. It probably wasn't enjoyable. Yeah. But for me, it was.
That's awesome. You also formed a big band for Phil Collins. How did that go about?
Well, that started because, in every tour, when it came time to introduce the members of the band, it would start one way, but as the tour went on, it evolved into a whole thing. I remember one tour, the introduction of the guys in the band took 20 minutes, and it turned into shtick, because he's got a comic mind, so it would turn into a whole thing. And one of the tours, I think it might have been, 94, 95, the keyboard player decided to play background music to his talking. So, this Genesis tune, Invisible Touch, he would play it like a Vegas lounge piano player. So that kind of evolved. And then before you know it, Phil said, can you add horns to that? So I wrote kind of a big bandy for 4 horns, and then he started talking about wanting to do a big band because he loved Buddy Rich and he loved Sonny Payne and Count Basie and all that. So he said, I want to do a big band. And Phil is a doer. When he gets an idea, he gets on it right away. So this wasn't right away, but in 1996, he said, let's do a big band. Let's do this and this and this and this and this. And his idea, There's a whole documentary on it, the making of Phil Collins Big Band. He wanted to do Buddy Rich charts. He wanted to do Louis Bellson stuff, you know. I said, you can't do that. If you're gonna do that, just get a bunch of charts and go rehearse in your living room every once a week. You can't do that. You have to do original stuff. And so let's try to let's try to transcribe or get some of your Genesis tunes, some of your tunes, adapt them for a jazz big band.
Yeah.
So we talked about all the possibilities. He gave me every CD that Genesis ever made, every CD he's ever made, and I listened to all this stuff. Then thought, well, these melodies are adaptable, and these are not, and la di da. And so I don't think I needed approval. You just said whatever you think.
Wow.
So then I got an arranger. Well, I started to assign arrangers for the different characteristics of the tunes. Like he wanted to do Invisible Touch Count Basie style. Mm-hmm. So I got Sammy Nestico to arrange that. He wanted this, that one. Then, so I remember Susudio is a big production tune. So I got the guy who did a lot of the arranging for the Tonight Show band. Big production. And he wrote a great arrangement. And John Clayton was a great musician and has his own band, Clayton Hamilton Big Band. He really is extraordinary. When you hear one of his arrangements, like from the first bar, the way he voices chords and stuff, it's jazz. This ain't Vegas. This is jazz.
Yeah.
So he wrote a fair amount of charts that needed that touch to also to make the big band legitimate, to have some serious sounding jazz.
Yeah.
There's a lot of big bands out there, and like I say, a lot of them sound like Vegas and hey. But John Clayton added the legitimacy of jazz to the big band. So we had all this stuff, and Phil doesn't read.
Really?
Right. So we this is the one wonderful thing about having money. He said, how much is it going to cost for you guys to record it in LA? And then he could have the tapes to study the music from. Oh, well, okay. So we got a budget together, and we're in a studio, and I hired a whole bunch of guys to record the music, and then sent them the things, and then he started practicing because he can't read. Yes, he has to play it by memory and memorize the stuff. So it was a long process for him to learn. This is all in that documentary, The Making of the Phil Collins Big Band. And he was going nuts because he didn't think he was going to be able to learn it at first. And he did, because he's got great musical instincts. Yeah. We rehearsed a lot with him. First, with just the rhythm section and the four horns, the Vine Street horns. We rehearsed a lot till he got all the hits and breaks. And then finally we got the big band together, which was the WDR band from Germany. I think it's Cologne, Germany. They're a radio station band, which in Germany they still have great musicians, really great band. So anyway, so they did the first tour with us, and I think it was 10 weeks or something like that. We toured all over Europe, played all the great jazz festivals.
Yeah.
And then we did it again in '98. And this time because when we played Montreux Jazz Festival in 1996, he met somebody through Quincy Jones, who used to be a professor, the head of music at Northern Illinois University.
Yeah.
So he made that contact, and then when we did it in '98, he called him to put together the horns, all the fill in the blanks in the big band. And so he called a bunch of his alumni, who, to my surprise, were great musicians. Because a lot of times people become college professors and stuff, and they don't practice as much. And man, these guys came; they were roaring musicians, and all professors in different universities around the country. So we did a 10-week tour of that, and we recorded a CD, which is that Hot Night in Paris, and it was very cool. It was fun, and I will put this on record and say it was probably the highest paying big band gig ever on earth for some of us.
Yeah.
I never told that to anybody, but there it goes.
Well, it's on record now.
I remember when, this is years ago, they were talking about Buddy Rich. He was a sideman. He was playing drums for Harry James' big band. It was like the highest paid sideman, in history. $1,000 a week. This is like,
man,
this is like in the '60s, which is probably a lot of money in the '60s. I mean, you could live on $150 a week back then. With $1,000 a week sounded really extravagant.
Yeah.
But the kind of money some of us made on the Phil Collins big band was I'm sure record shattering. But it was never documented.
Yeah. What characteristics would you say a successful musician should have?
Well, most of which I don't have characteristics. I think, number one, to be a great team player, be able to work well within a group. I'm not always a great team player, which is one of the reasons I've always had horn sections that I work with best, because I grew up with a ghetto mentality. I did. I think maybe if I would have gone to college, I would have learned protocol and pecking order and stuff like that. One of the biggest mistakes I made in my early days doing studio work and stuff, I walked in with all this enthusiasm from having done things a certain way all my life. Hey, maybe we should phrase it this way, or maybe we should play this note long or this note short, and that voicing doesn't sound good, let's change it. When it wasn't my place to do that. I wasn't doing that to call attention. It just didn't sound good to me.
Yeah.
But protocol there is you got an arranger who arranged the thing, and you just shut up, and if there's something that doesn't sound right, he has to change it. But no. So anyway, I always kind of was drawn to creating jobs myself with my own horn section, doing the writing so that I didn't have to sit there and, not that I was a snob, but I always wanted the best possible product.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, I just wanted the best possible product. And a lot of times, I've worked for great arrangers where it sounded great, but then also I've worked with arrangers that were keyboard arrangers and really didn't have a full vision of what horns can do. So then you say, listen to this, and you might change the phrasing or put an effect on a note, and they go, oh, that sounds great. Yeah, let's add that in there. They didn't know you could do that. There was a long period of time when arrangers, especially when sequencers and all that came into play, you had these keyboard players writing horn arrangements and very uncharacteristic like horn parts. So anyway, but that's one thing. Teamwork, punctuality, all the professional stuff that any particular career would require.
Yeah.
Your appearance, dress for the job you want, so I think your appearance has a lot to do with first impressions when you meet new people, when you go play somewhere. Full knowledge of music, harmony and theory.
That's good.
Chords. Yeah. That's really important because there will come a time when things are going wrong in the studio and nobody knows how to fix it, but you know how because you studied this stuff. You know how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And that helps you get hired. I think that contributing to a project, for me, when I hire guys, I like to see guys that are enthusiastic about trying something new and different, and that are not snobs. Oh, I don't play hip hop, or oh no, I don't play country. No, this is a certain appreciation that you have to have as a musician for all forms of music.
Right.
You know, because if you don't appreciate it, you really don't know how it works. And if you don't know how it works, you can't play it when you're asked to play it, you know. So, I mean, like salsa, for instance, understanding their rhythms and to play precisely within those rhythms is important. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I could play it," and then they play it, and they don't have it because they never really took it seriously and understood the intricacies of it.
Right.
Same thing with R&B and funk and stuff like that. The guitar patterns, the drum patterns and stuff. As a horn player, you have to understand what's going on in there, and all your horn parts have to fit in like a glove in it. And I think like an amateur horn section always sounds out of pocket, you know, because they don't understand the little nuances of whatever rhythms are going on with the guitars playing, or you know. And one of the obvious things is in pop music is the backbeat.
2 and 4.
Yeah. And then, you know, you have a horn section that's not really, you know, knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Whenever they have notes on 2 and 4, they flam with the drums. You know, you know, right there with that. And then, you know, a lot of people say, I always say it, you know, your lead horn player is the drummer, you know. And that's true with all music, I think, that has African roots, you know, whether it be 2 and 4 or it be another kind, like a reggaeton or something like that.
Yeah.
Those are important beats, you know, and you have to be very conscious of while you're playing. So when you have a note that lands on any one of those important beats, you have to be right on with them. So understanding different styles. And that goes under the heading of versatility. You know, don't be a snob. Don't be too cool for the room. You know, one thing I don't like is when I'm playing and I'm having fun and I'm being exuberant about it, and then the guy next to me is like, you know, couldn't care less. I don't want to be around a downer like that, you know, or somebody who thinks he's too good for doing a little dance move with you.
Right.
You know, that really bothers me. This is my personal thing, but it's important to have a certain amount of enthusiasm when you play, because band leaders like that.
Yeah.
You know, artists like that. You know,
Stage presence.
Stage presence, and I'll give you further showmanship. Showmanship is something that has to come from the heart, because you're so involved in the music. Use the word engage. You get so engaged in your music, man. When you hear the drummer and then the fills, and then your body starts to move, and you go, "Yeah, baby!" And then you start playing. You know, it encourages the drummer.
Yeah.
And it encourages the bass player,
Right.
and it's contagious. It goes around the band because you're having such a great time and you're encouraging each other. Ultimately, the artist gets encouraged. He doesn't know it, but he's getting excited because of me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then the audience gets the thing. You know, showmanship is important because we live in an age where people go to concerts. They're not only listening, they're watching. And if you got all these musicians standing in the background, you know, with their hands in their pockets and picking their nose, I always say that, you know, when a person pays $300, $400 for a ticket to see a show, they want to see musicians on stage that are bigger than life.
That's good.
They don't want to see an average Joe
For
standing there, you know. So I think that's important. Showmanship is very important. You know, the complete knowledge of your instrument, and I could go further on that, but I mean, those are the basic things.
Yeah.
Getting along with people, you know. The people I pick to travel with me have to be able to, you know, when you're traveling on the road, it's a family.
Yeah.
Everybody has to get along. And I've made the mistake of hiring the wrong people sometimes and go, oh, because they create friction and stuff like that. So that's important to be able to get along with everybody and just be a sharpshooter. Bring a lot to the party.
Yeah.
Bring a lot because you'll be asked to use it all at one point in your career.
Right.
You'll be at different points of your career. You'll be asked just to do this, to that, and have be very knowledgeable. But one thing that I think is important to know nowadays because there is less and less work. A lot of musicians in the horn world, for instance, a lot of young people come out of universities, come to LA. They're all brilliant players. But one thing that's important to know that I've learned is you can't please everybody. You can't want to be great at everything. You have to identify what it is about your playing that is special, and see if you could emphasize that, because that's going to separate you from everybody else. It could be your sound, it could be your concept, it could be your. I mean, it's great. Like if you have 4 trumpets, everybody plays the same, great. But there's got to be a time when you have your own approach to it, and that's. And the thing about it that I've learned, because there's a lot of trumpet players don't like the way I play, and a lot of musical directors don't like the way I play, but that's not my fault because this is the way I play. I have never, I have never tried to conform.
Right.
Put it that way, and that's part of my ghetto mentality.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to play the way you guys play. This is the way I want to play.
Yeah.
So, but the thing about it was that out of all the people that don't like the way I play, there were 3 or 4 people in my whole career that really liked the way I played. And those are the ones that made my career.
Wow.
Because I didn't have a shabby career. The ones that did like what I brought made a career out of it for me.
Wow.
So I was never worried that
That's good.
I couldn't sit there and do that and sit there and do that. If I guess if I really wanted to, I could have conformed and toned down, the way I play and all this kind of stuff, so I could fit in, like doing a Broadway show and stuff like that. It was never of interest to me to do that. I don't think my personality would allow me to do that because I'm kind of fidgety. So to sit around and doing that kind of stuff would be very. It would take a lot of effort on my part. And so I was drawn to things that called for me to be myself.
Yeah.
And those are the things that I built a whole career on.
That's good.
I didn't look for it. It just came to me.
Yeah.
Somebody said, I like the way he sounds. I want him. Phil Collin, for instance, 30 years working. Jeez.
No, yeah.
I remember hearing about a guy, how long you been with the band? Oh, 17 years. 17 years? That's a lot of years. And here I am playing with Phil Collins for 30. I'm going, geez.
Yeah.
But,
That's good.
So that's an important thing. You have to be good at everything, but don't try to please everybody because you'll miss out on what you're great at. People always say, hey, Mr. Kim, how do I become a great trumpet player? Well, first thing, what's great about you? What's great about your playing? And then, if you focus on that, nobody else in the world will be able to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because that's great about you. So, I've gotten a certain stage in my life where, I feel good with what I do. I feel confident, and I want to keep bringing it. When there's people who want it and people who hate it. I don't care. I'm doing okay. I'm doing just fine.
Yeah.
I think part of the happiness and satisfaction in life is to stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
Not have to conform to things that doesn't come natural. I think there's personalities that do it well, that can fit in anywhere and do it, but I'm not that guy. You know, I'm not that guy. I think a lot of it has to do, like I joke about it, but it's true. It's my ghetto mentality, and coming out of the ghetto at a time when Koreans were not, or Asians particularly, were not looked at very positively. You know, I was born when the Korean War was raging, and it was just a few years after the war with the Japanese. So, you know, Asian people were not considered to be to have a voice. You know, stereotypical Asians were quiet, and they were so quiet that they would say they were. You never know what they're thinking. So, you know, it was just a lot of stereotypes that I tried to not be. So, in it's, even though naturally I felt non-confrontational sometimes, but there I was not conforming. I really tried to not be stereotypical.
Yeah.
Because I got pissed off. I played trumpet. Trumpet's a demonstrative instrument, you know, and you know, don't blow me off. You know, Asians at one time were invisible. People would easily blow you off as being non-existent. You know, it wasn't until I don't know what year it was where people realized Asian students were really smart. So now everybody thinks of Asians as being really smart. Still nerds, but smart. But they didn't even think of us as smart back then. You know, it was just like a thorn in society.
Yeah.
See, who are these people? You know, if you were even noticed, I would think mostly that I felt like invisible.
Yeah.
You know, so it made me more demonstrative. Also, with my Latin being mixed with the Latin culture, it helped me because I felt like I had a certain kind of identity, and it was very compatible to the way I am myself, you know, and so that had a lot to do with it. Just coming out of my shell and not caring if I fit in or not after a while, you know.
Yeah.
So that's my story about music, and you know, trying to figure out what you do that's different from everybody else, and I think that's most gratifying when you get a chance to be that way, to play music that you love and make a living and have fun on stage. You know, some of the shows a lot of the shows we do at Phil Collins, for instance. You know, when you walk off that stage, it feels like when you see a tennis championship where the guy who wins or the girl who wins just throw herself on the ground in gratitude, because that's what it is when they throw themselves on the ground after winning one of those huge championships. It's gratitude.
Yeah.
They put so much effort into this game and to get to that part, you know, at that point, you know, there's so many games before it that led up to that championship game, and they just throw themselves down. That's what it feels like when you finish a concert that's really fulfilling. You just want to throw yourself on the ground and say, thank you, God, for the opportunity to do this. You know, it's that intense. You know, you don't get that all the time when you're in the music business.
Yeah.
But I'm addicted to it. I need to have those, even if I play or accept a low paying salsa gig at a local club. If I can walk out of there going, yeah, it's so much fun. You know, it's worth it. It really is worth it because I thrive on that. My whole existence thrives on that.
That's good.
You know.
That's
so
good.
Anyway,
Harry, what do you think about the current state of the music industry?
Well, you know, I'm not the person to talk about that because I've never worried about stuff. I know the music industry is in really bad shape right now because nobody's selling records. You know, only like there's this small percentage of top high-end people that are selling records like Beyonce or Taylor Swift and stuff like that. But your average person that maybe 20 years ago would have been selling a few million records aren't selling nothing, and of course, a lot of it has to do with technology. People could rip off your music, and they found ways to play your music without having to pay a whole lot of money. And I think it's a drag. But see, I'm not involved in the writing of music, or the writing songs and stuff. But if I was, I'd be really pissed off that I'm not getting paid for that. You find that artists are all touring now because they're not making the record sales money, and there's still big money in touring if you draw people. But I've seen a difference even with Phil Collins when he was on top of the world with selling records. And he was selling more records around the world than anybody else. And there were a lot of perks on the tour, lots of perks that aren't there now, because it's not about the records, it's about the live performances.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's still wonderful, but some of the perks are, and I know not to expect them. It's kind of cool. And but the music industry is tough. I mean, politically speaking, the union busting has hurt the music business. It's every man for himself. They're doing a lot of the people who are standing firm in LA, especially with films and stuff like that. They're not winning because companies are just taking their music and recording it in other places like Prague and or states that have no unions are not allowed in, so their orchestras and stuff don't have to file a union contract. I think it boils down to a certain amount of bean counting. You got these accountants that are hired to get things done as cheaply as possible.
Right.
Nowadays, everybody, but it doesn't mean they're not making money. They just want to do things as cheaply as possible. I mean, I know that there was a dispute a friend of mine had about doing something for a movie, and it was going to cost the producer $75,000 more to do it through the union, and the movie was probably going to make huge profits. And he pointed that out to the guy. He says, it's going to cost you just $75,000. And he simply said, that's $75,000 less going into my pocket. And he just did not care about getting this thing done through the union. So it's kind of like the climate, the way things are being seen today. In the event world, it used to be, event world means like corporations. Big corporations used to have events all the time, parties and Christmas parties and all this kind of stuff, where they spent a lot of money on entertainment and big banquets and stuff like that. And, they're just not doing it anymore. It's not like they're making less money. Big pharma and big, huge insurance companies, these big parties they used to throw, they're not throwing it anymore. And partially because they don't want to make it seem like they're making big profits, show off. But if you look at their numbers, they are. They just figure, well, why do we have to do this? We don't need to spend that money. And so a lot of the musicians who used to work a lot of private events are not doing them anymore. It's something that if I'm gonna, you have to really think hard if you want to become a musician nowadays. It's really hard. But the person that really wants to do it will not be worried or consider any of the obstacles in front of them.
Exactly.
Because I think that a real musician, like anything, they have to do it. It's not just that they want to do it. They have to be
It's
a
a
musician.
certain drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I'm poor the rest of my life. I have to do it, you know? And it's one of those. People ask me all the time, you know, the people that are no longer in the music business that maybe played in college and stuff, and they say, I often wondered if I kept playing, if I would have been successful. And my answer is, no, if you could be talked out of it, you wouldn't have made it.
Wow.
Because, you know, you cannot be talked out of it. And then you just go and go.
Yeah.
You could make your life miserable, or your life could turn out amazing.
Yeah.
You know, there's no guarantees of anything, but that's what makes musicians and artists so special, you know, because it's like they say, devil may care. I don't care. I just have to play music. I have to do it, you know, and well, you know, you won't be able to support a family. And then you get all this stuff from parents and people. No, you won't be able to do this. You won't be. Well, it doesn't matter, because those become luxuries in a way. Having a family is a luxury, you know. And but one day it happens, and you find, you can afford it, and it can work.
Yeah.
But you have to have a lust and an obsession for it. Because if you're halfway through, you'll quit somewhere along the line. And you don't even have to worry about that. Because when that day comes, it'll just happen. You know, you say, oh, I've had enough. Let me go work at Costco.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. You know, so it's worth a chance one way or the other. You're not going to die.
Yeah.
You know, but if you have to do it, do it.
Yeah.
You know.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good, Harry. Name maybe 2 or 3 accomplishments that you are really proud of.
Well, during my musical career, but has nothing to do with my musical career, is fatherhood, raising my son.
Yeah.
You know, I think that thinking out of the box has been enabled me to offer him insights on life, and hopefully has given him certain freedoms that, you know, it's not like, all right, it's a cookie cutter life. You do good in school, you go to college, you get out of college, you get a job, and you do this, and you get your promotions and like that. And that really gives me the EBGBs to think that my son would do that. You know, my son is in a creative field, much like me, and he loves it. And if anything, I feel proud that I can offer him that a life. I mean, if he was another kind of person, I wouldn't have done that. I would say, okay, go to college, because if he was, you know, driven to go to college and become a CEO of a company, okay, that's fine. But my son had very artistic characteristics right from the beginning. I said, go, enjoy it, you know, and somehow it'll work. It'll work. That's one thing. For me, it's the same thing. I'm really proud that I had a very free sort of lifestyle. You know, I did what I had to do because I wanted to, not because I had to. You know, I practiced, I learned about music, and then I went out and played. It was just, I'm really proud of that, and a lot. I think of myself as Forrest Gump. Yeah, I didn't plan on anything. Things just happened. You know, I was in the right place at the right time. Right. I don't think I'm nowhere near as talented as some people out there. I didn't network like other people have, and I'm not socially graced like a lot of people, you know. I don't advise people to be like me, lazy. But I'm not kidding. I just, you know, just kind of going through life, and one thing leads to another, another thing leads to another, another thing leads to another, and before you know it, you know, years have gone by, and I find, oh, I did okay.
Yeah.
You know, and again, lots of that has to do with my approach in playing music. I love to play, and I try to demonstrate it every time I play it. Um, and again, not everybody's gonna like that.
Yeah,
And the ones who did made me a career. So
that's good.
I feel proud of that, and I feel proud that at my friend said never say at my age, so I try not to say it. So I say at my stage of the game, I'm proud that I'm still playing really good. I mean, I think I'm playing better now than ever before, and that I'm still relevant in a certain way.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think I'd be playing at this age. So at this stage of the game, sorry.
You went for it.
I fell in the trap. You trapped me. But I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
I'm proud that my son was always proud of me.
That's awesome.
Since he was
Yeah.
a little baby. He used to come to the stadiums and the arenas to hear me play, and he thought that all dads do that.
Wow.
He thought
Yeah.
that's what I always do. Yeah, I remember taking him to a club one time, and he was like, "So small." And he didn't realize I did a lot of different things, but I think that was important. I think that's important as a parent to try to make sure your kids are proud of you. And I'm gonna drift off way here, but
Do your
but
thing.
one of the things I think that happened in some parental experiences is that maybe because of the way they were brought up, what they've seen or something, they treat kids like kids. They treat children like, what do you know? You're a kid. I think it's really important to validate your child, even when they're little. Give them responsibilities to choose which food they want. Give them a choice. Don't say, "What do you want to eat?"
Yeah.
Say, "You want to eat this, or you want to wear this? You want to wear that?" From like babies.
Yeah.
On a high chair. You give them the responsibility to choose, and they start to build this feeling of self-esteem that I can choose,
Right.
and then listening to all their opinions, as stupid and childish as it may be, give them a chance to voice it
Yeah.
and comment on it. Because this child will grow up feeling so safe and so validated by the parent that when they get to that age of rebellion, they won't look for validation outside of the house.
Wow.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
Oh, their friends say this, their friends say that, and they're the coolest out there. And that's how parents lose their children, because they ignored them all their life, treating them like children.
Yeah.
And then when they get to that certain age, adolescents, 14, 15, 13 years old, they're still treating them that way. And I just say, no, man, you can't treat me that way. I'm a grown up now. Their minds, their whole persona has changed suddenly overnight. So that means you have to change. But it's too late by that time if you hadn't validated your kids.
Yeah.
So they look for it out in the streets.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of that. And a lot of that had to do with my wife, who's a natural child psychologist. She knew so much about instinctively. She didn't study it or nothing,
Yeah.
And so, I see it with my son. We're like really close, and he's always been a good guy. He's got a good heart. He's a good husband. So anyway, I'm proud of that.
That's good.
And I don't know what that has to do with music, but
You raised him, obviously, so you're proud of that, and he's proud of you for what you've been able to do.
it makes me feel really happy when I see that he's proud of me.
That's good. That's good. Harry, any last words of advice that you have for aspiring musicians? What's some words that you would like to share with them?
Don't stress. Things will happen one way or the other, whether you stress or not. Everything happens for a reason. I know that's a corny thing, but everything will happen. I think you should have faith in God, because ultimately I really believe that you don't have a lot of control with what happens in your life. it's grace of God. It just,
That's good.
Every day is different. Whether you go out and walk in the middle of the street and get hit by a car or not, that's grace of God that you didn't. Every day is, you have to be grateful for every day and everything you do. And most important, don't worry. I remember going through periods of times, like when I was a teenager, and it wasn't even worry. It was wondering if I would ever be a musician, a professional musician. And it was a fleeting thought. I didn't worry because somehow I felt very positive that things are going to work out. And so I tell people, no matter how much you stress, it ain't going to make a difference.
Yeah.
So just make moves towards a vision. I think it's important to have a vision, a detailed vision, and not about the house you want to live in and the car you want to own, but a vision about a condition of life.
Wow.
Like, I want to feel grateful for everything. I want to feel that all my efforts have paid off, not monetarily or materially, but in my own heart. I say, I really feel good about what I just did. I think when you are good at something, one of the natural perks is money. I really think so. I never worried about money, and I still don't worry about money. And it seems to draw in more money the less I worry about it.
Yeah.
It's just that way. And money isn't everything, as they say.
Right.
You want to be able to care for your family. That's relative also. What are you talking about? Drive your kid to the soccer game in a Mercedes? You should be just happy to be able to drive your kid to the soccer game, period. He don't care what kind of car he's in.
Yeah.
So be a good parent. Stop thinking about the Mercedes. I grew up in a tenement house, rat-filled and cockroach-filled. I wasn't worried about a mansion. I still grew up. It didn't affect, give your kid the best you can, but it's not the end of the world if you can't live in Bel Air.
Right.
The attention, I think a lot of this can be easily seen. The attention you give your children is what makes happy children, not the material things you give them.
Right.
You start giving them all this stuff, they grow up to be spoiled and then grow up to be vicious corporate people, vicious.
Yeah.
You don't want to perpetuate that kind of crap in the world.
Yeah.
So that's another accomplishment. You could say, or I could say that I brought a really great human being into the world.
Yeah.
So don't stress.
That's good.
Don't stress.
Awesome.
Things will happen. Yeah.
Harry, thank you so much for your time.
All right, now get out of here.
Episode number 19 with Harry Kim. Thank you so much, man. That was great.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
It was fun.
Yes.
And it's for an introvert like me, it's usually very difficult to talk.
Man.
But you are just so great at it. You just dragged all this information. And thank you very much also.
Thank you, Harry. That was awesome.
Yeah,
Episode 19 with Harry Kim.
Next time, bring pizza.
Yes.
Okay,
we'll do.
Bye.
Welcome back. Thank you for checking out episode number 19 with Harry Kim. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Episode number 20 comes out next week, so make sure to tune in, hit that subscribe button so you guys can know when that video's up. All right, y'all. See you guys next week.